Good morning. Welcome to the Crypto Morning News. I'm your host, Taylor Shrum, and Bitcoin is rocking out at $91,565 per coin today. It is a lower price than most folks were expecting to see this time of the year. I certainly am surprised to see a price this low, but it doesn't really put a frown on my face because this is a lower price for something I want. Um, we like cookie butter in our house, my wife and I. We really like cookie butter that you can get from Trader Joe's in the United States. You can also now get it from Walmart. We like cookie butter. When cookie butter goes on sale, I don't want cookie butter less, right? I want cookie butter more. Okay, Bitcoin and assets like Apple and Microsoft and Ethereum, these are assets that I think are really good assets to store value in and to grow my wealth over time. Uh, I do not demand them less because the price is lower, right? And I think as newer investors and as newer traders, we kind of get it wrong. We forget, our emotions cloud how we think about these assets. They're tools, they're instruments for an end, and that end is growing wealth and being prepared for retirement, being able to leave something for your family, and in the meantime have enough excess stored energy, stored labor to be able to live the life you want to live. All right. So let's look at the charts. That is my morning welcome to you all. We'll get into the news. The news is somewhat interesting, but remember, we're in a news vacuum because tomorrow we get a big print from NVIDIA. We get the earnings from NVIDIA, and then the 20th we get the jobs data. Now the vacuum has been filled. That news vacuum has been filled. We had a bunch of internet outages. Luckily, it doesn't seem to have affected the charts too much in terms of prices of assets. But Cloudflare, this company here, ticker NET, NET, this is a stock. This company had an outage issue. They're blaming it on too much traffic. That's a little bit sus. But yeah, this one's down quite a bit. Now, I will say, I don't talk about stocks a whole lot on here as much as I should. This, to me, is looking pretty juicy. I've been wanting to buy Cloudflare. This might be the opportunity to pick some of this up because it is on discount today. The question is, I do have an overarching thesis that potentially equities might not be the asset class to rotate into, though, over the next 3 months. Let me actually go ahead and spell that out for you here. We'll look at the Bitcoin chart in here in just a second. I know I kind of teased that. That wasn't my intention to do that, but I do have this overlying prediction, which is this. Bitcoin and ETH will show a clear sign of bottoming soon, right? We haven't seen that yet. We haven't gotten the confirmation of it, and we haven't gotten an overwhelming sentiment shift quite yet. Okay, so bottom in, I don't think so, but maybe. There's also the third option, which is that the bottom's in, but we trade sideways for a while until sentiment returns. But equity, so that's the first part of the prediction. Part two is that around that time, around that bottoming, equities will start to sell off / trade sideways as AI stocks reprice. A few weeks of this type of dynamic that becomes undeniable after a couple of weeks. A few weeks of this will trigger the asset class rotation as we get pulled into the Market Structure Act news cycle. Okay, so that's, I think, the outline of what to expect next for crypto investors. Let's get into that Bitcoin chart really quickly, because I've been finding a lot of value in just kind of thinking about this CME gap. I think this is the most relevant, this is the most recent psychological level that the whole market has been forced to observe and really think about, other than the psychological level of 90K, just in general. So when I'm looking at this, this is actually what I was kind of expecting to happen, and I told you guys about this yesterday, is that I figured we would come down and we would wick it. Now, I would have been telling you this potentially when we were still up here, right, for Bitcoin, because I would have been telling you in the morning of the 17th. But I figured we would go ahead and get into this CME gap and we would clear it. Good morning, everybody. And then we would have an oversold period. The problem is I don't know if that was oversold enough. What did we wick down to? We wicked down to 89.3. That's pretty decent. That's pretty decent. I could see that being the end of it, but something tells me it's not. But I do think that it could be the end of it. And let me jump ahead. Let me jump ahead to something that is breaking news stuff. Mt. Gox moved 10,000 Bitcoin. That's almost $1 billion worth of Bitcoin after 8 months of inactivity. Okay. And the first comment on this actually says it really, really well. I have no idea who this is, Apex Crypto Signals, but it said the market has developed immunity to this specific narrative after hearing it for decades. Panic selling on recycled news is exactly how retail traders donate their coins to waiting institutions. And then there's a whole bunch of other comments. I did notice as I was reading through those comments, though, that there was a lot of bots saying, oh my gosh, I better sell my Bitcoin, right? Kind of piling in and doing the work of the composite man. So I think it's really interesting there. I really do think that's kind of interesting in the fact that we're coming into what could be the bottom, right? We had this CME gap. CME gaps fill. They just fill. And there's plenty of CME gaps to the bottom for Bitcoin that won't fill, in my opinion, just like in Amazon and other, historically extremely bullish assets that reach a point of exponential growth. There are gaps that will just never fill to the downside, but this one has filled. Well, we know it's filled because we're looking at it right now. So this could be kind of the exuberant overselling that then is highlighted by this Mt. Gox headline that we're getting. So this Mt. Gox headline gets trotted out to try to shake out the last bit of retail, and then that's and then we resume to the upside. I'm trying to tell the optimistic story, just full disclosure. Is there a chance we continue lower? Absolutely. There's a lot of talented analysts that are calling for much lower prices. 68 people are saying 73. Like there's arguments for prices quite on down the line, right? What I'll say though is there were a lot of talented analysts who were calling for much higher prices here though too, right? So an analyst worth their salt is also just buying the dips, right? And that's what we do. That's what Tim does. That's what Rufio does. That's what everybody does, is you just keep buying the dips in which you're convicted in with your investment bags. Trading is definitely separate. Investing, though, you just keep buying the dips in which you're convicted in. In the past, that would have been Amazon. In the past, that would have been Apple, right? Today, in our market cycle, there's AI stocks that are good to buy the dip on. There's biotech, there's pharmaceutical stocks that are good to buy the dip on. But I'm sitting here looking at Ethereum, looking at Solana, looking at Bitcoin and saying, these are assets that are set up for the future, the next age of technological development and financial development. So while it's painful to be an investor in this asset class today, I think that pain will be rewarded with what I talked about earlier in this stream. Wealth in the future that creates a comfortable retirement, but also creates a lot of options for you in the present as you build that wealth. Okay. Sentiment outlook. Bulls stay sidelined. That's really the long and short of it. How do we know that this is long and short of it? Because we're not seeing a huge movement to the upside, right? That would signal that the sideline is now empty and bulls are emptying out of the sideline. They're rotating back into risk. We're not seeing that quite yet. By the way, Ethereum is green on the day, up 1.6 today. And I think Solana might be green as well. No, there's a decent amount of green names. So Solana's up 6%. But if you go back and you look here, there's been a lot of green candles for Solana in the past during this movement to the downside. I mean, look how big these were in this relief rally here. This was a move of, I know it's 2 candles, but 17%. Just one of these candles was 10%. So I would not say that this is the candle signaling to me that the bottom is definitely in and confirmed. Not by a long shot. However, it is comforting to see. It is nice to see a bit of relief, and this could potentially open the door for this to be the bottom. Fear and greed, 11 out of 10. So still not to single digits yet. I don't think we have to get to single digits necessarily, but the fact that fear and greed is at 11 is significant. It's extreme fear. 25 basis point cut. This is an interesting one. 47% when I documented it this morning. Let's check to the live and see what it is now, because last I checked, it is still neck and neck. Okay, so this has changed. This is a bit of a difference from yesterday. This was maybe why we're seeing such a big green candle on Solana. It is now neck and neck, a pause versus a rate cut. Okay. It is not baked in right now, a rate cut. I think that you can see that the market has repriced. Some of that repricing on the crypto side is due to this Fed spread getting unfavorable, that they weren't going to cut in December. And look, I have no idea what they're going to do. Maybe they don't cut. Maybe they hike. I highly doubt it. But the reality is that the market doesn't know. It is literally neck and neck right now. It couldn't get any closer to 50-50. So those are pretty good odds. Those are pretty good odds. Moving along here. Sticking with the news here. News vacuum before NVIDIA and Walmart earnings on the 19th. That's right. So Walmart also has their earnings on the 19th. So that's going to be important because that's going to be a gauge of consumer sentiment. If Walmart was able to grow their earnings, grow revenue, maybe even show some cost cutting as well, that's going to be bullish, right? Because that, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's actually pretty good for the tariff narrative, because that gives Trump more leverage over China to say, hey, look, you know, our consumers are still doing what they do best. They're still going out and buying. It's filling that margin. BLS data comes on the 20th. We've talked about this. So now the vacuum that was created by these further out headlines that we were anticipating, that vacuum was filled. And it was filled by this Cloudflare headline, unfortunately. I mean, Cloudflare really dropped the ball on this. It looks to me like there wasn't any serious, like, long-term damage. Let me know if that's wrong. Let me know if you've seen something that has signaled long-term damage to something in crypto or something. But all I've seen is just kind of outage, and I wasn't able to use Twitter this morning, which sucked. It made me feel very sad. There it is. Cloudflare outage spreads to crypto, multiple front ends down. Not the blockchains themselves, but the front ends. Record 1.26 billion outflows hits BlackRock Bitcoin ETF on bearish options. Cost soars. Okay. Mt. Gox moves that 956 million. Okay. To resolve this headline as well, this is how Arkham, who is equipped to make comments on this, this is how they're digesting it. They say Mt. Gox just transferred 16 million of the Bitcoin to Kraken. Okay, so of that almost 1 billion Bitcoin, dollars worth of Bitcoin, I should say, is the billion number. 16 million of it has just moved to Kraken. Mt. Gox just transferred 16 million to Kraken after a test transaction. 936 million of the Bitcoin has been moved to another Mt. Gox wallet. Mt. Gox made their last major moment 8 months ago, 8 months ago, depositing 77 million worth of Bitcoin to Kraken for distribution to creditors. And I think that's our key right here, is that it's distribution to creditors. This is not a sell, right? This is going to be a distribution to creditors. So there's a chance they have to sell into the market. I don't know. Does anybody know if they sold and returned dollars or fiat to creditors, or if they returned Bitcoin to creditors? I'm not sure. Maybe somebody knows that. But my guess here is that the parties that are interested in Bitcoin continuing to move lower are providing incentives for Mt. Gox to take these types of actions. Because people who are newer to the markets don't have that long-term memory of Mt. Gox gets trotted out again and again and again to create bearish sentiment in the space. There's another one too. FTX still owes a bunch of people money, right? And well, they have to sell it, blah, 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 blah. And it's just this maze of whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't really, it matters because they are real numbers, they are real transactions, but this too shall pass, right? Either they're going to sell it and the price is going to go lower, or they're not going to sell it. You have to be prepared for both eventualities, but more than likely you probably already are, because you're practicing good risk management in general. All right, so that's the Mt. Gox kind of investment logic on that. Bullish vibes. Trump participates in a bilateral meeting with Saudi Crown Prince today around noon. And then Fidelity introduces FSOL ETF, bringing major Wall Street names to Solana funds. Okay. Now, Solana already has multiple they definitely have one. I think they have multiple spot ETFs now out at this point, meaning issuers, not the Solana Foundation, but issuers like Bitwise already has a staking Solana fund ETF already out there trading, which is pretty cool. That's right. So I think it's called GSOL, BSOL. So Bravo Sol. I can just show it to you. Let's go look at it. BSOL. When you hold this ETF, you get staking. Now, I don't think you get all the staking. I think you get a portion of it. Man, look at that candlestick configuration there. That's a bit of a bottomy looking configuration. I don't know officially if that is, but anyway. So this ETF here, ticker BSOL, is a staked ETF, meaning they pay you in BSOL though. So by pay you, I mean the dividend that you're going to get, the staking dividend, whatever it is. I don't know what the legal term is, so be careful with that. But it's not a distribution; it's something else. But you're getting BSOL back, and I don't know what the rate is either. Things I don't know about this ETF, but it's pretty good. All right, let's move on. Let's keep moving here. Look ahead, NVIDIA earnings on the 19th. We've talked about it. QT ends December 1st. FOMC December 10th. Supreme Court ruling on tariffs, TBD. Asia was decidedly red. There is some news there, actually. Maybe I'll take a look at that. Nike was down 3.2. That's the Japanese stock market, not Nike the stock. But let's look at this really quickly, because let's do a quick little bonds corner. I haven't talked about bonds in ages, so maybe we should do that. Don't worry, I'll make it quick. I'll make it painless. This is the U.S. 10-year Treasury. Okay, what this is telling me is that we're having a bit of a relief rally here for the Treasuries. This is telling me, remember, when the yields go up, that means the underlying values of the bonds are going down. It's not quite that simple, but you can think about the bonds as inversely correlated to the yields. So right now, there's not as much demand for those bonds. How do we know that? Because since October 22nd, when bond yields bottomed out, those incentives have had to climb in order to get the bond buyers back in the game. Now, that is the exception to the trend, though, right? Because the trend has been down since May of 2025. The trend has been down. It's been down since longer than that, January 2025, really. So it's been down, but right now we're seeing a tick back up, okay? So what does that mean? That actually means that there's a decent amount of money on the sidelines. There's a lot of pressure on the dollar, a lot of money moving into the dollar, swapping for bonds. So that is the segue into the Japanese yield, which is much higher. It's at like an all-time high at this point. From a percentage standpoint, it's actually not as high as the dollar. I'm sorry, as the U.S. 10-year, and that's a problem. So when you have the U.S. 10-year trending down, right? It's been trending down here. It's gotten as low as 3.9, but it's coming from a pretty long sustained period of being above 3.4 and kind of averaging around 4.2%. I'm going to land this. Stick with me here. Bonds are important. I don't talk about them often, so when I do, it's important when I'm bringing it up. The Japanese yields are going up, and historically they have been going up, right? But they just keep going up, 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 up. And what do we remember about the Japanese carry trade, right? There is a spread that is shrinking, and we've just looked at it on the charts, right? This one is going up, okay? The cost of loaning money, the cost of borrowing money, I should say, is going up. In Japan, the cost of borrowing money is going down in America, okay? So while that's good for Americans in general, because that's going to increase the velocity of money, it's a problem for the yen carry trade. Okay, so that's where I'll say. I'll leave it there. I have so I will leave it there. I won't completely land it and say it's bullish or bearish, but that is something to monitor, and that's probably why we saw Asia close so poorly today. Is that the calculations being done, at the very least, they're going to have to do a lot of QE over there in Japan to try to bridge the gap between a lot of this, what's going to be illiquidity there in Japan as those rates go higher. All right, you guys are super tired of hearing about bonds, and I am as well. Let's see. Let's go check on the comments here. ETH bulls trying to hold 3K. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Angel of CV. Josh Sloan says exciting times. DH85 Rock says, what to do, groceries or Bitcoin? I think I'll go with Bitcoin. No. Pay your bills, folks. Pay your bills. Let's see. Is there another Japan reverse trade coming soon? That's what's heating up, right? It doesn't have to happen because there's always a world where, these yields just flatten out, right? Or they go back, they reverse and go the other way. The American yield comes back up, the Japanese yield comes down, and then the yen carry trade continues. But remember, what does this mean? Like, very sophisticated hedge funds and global investment firms are able to say, hey, Japanese central bank, give me close to free money, right? I'm going to borrow it at a very low rate. I'm going to go turn over here to the United States Central Bank or the ECB, the European Central Bank, or the anybody with a higher rate. I'm going to turn around and say, okay, give me your treasuries with this borrowed money. And guess what? I get to pocket that 4%. That's a real thing. That's what the yen carry trade is in a lot of ways. And so people will leverage that. They'll go out and they'll leverage it. But the problem with that is as the American cost to borrow money goes down, right? And therefore the yield that these treasuries spin off, so the amount that I get paid for holding treasuries goes down, right? And the cost of loans over here in what was free Japanese central bank loaning facility, now it's going up, right? So what does that mean? It means my margin shrinks, right? So that money's got to go somewhere. Now, that could be a bullish thing in the mid to long term because that money's going to flow out of that and wind down out of the Japanese carry trade. But in the short term, that could be very, very lead to a lot of volatility. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. I spent probably too much time, and I hope I get the feeling I confused people more than I clarified. I will continue to monitor that and bring it to your attention as needed. But we did get a question about it, so that's good. Nathan Patel asked about the Japanese reverse unwind, blah blah blah. Yes, I do think that is mounting. Thanks for what you do. Still thinking about the cookie butter. Never heard of it. Oh, you got to get the cookie butter. You got to get cookie butter. This is important stuff. Very important. Yeah, this is pretty much it. So this is going to be the most important analysis. It's not this. This is coffee creamer, which is cookie butter flavored, but Biscoff creamy cookie butter. And this was the OG, the one from Trader Joe's, which is an American. It's actually a German, but I don't know. Anyway, this is a good product. I like it. And I like it even more when the price goes down for it. What's going on with Jasmine? I'm going to be straight up with you. I have not checked in on the Jasmine narrative in a long time, so I don't know. But it is an altcoin that, in my opinion, has got very little traction with American institutions. So I'd be very careful with it. I don't know that that's going to perform until way later in the euphoric phase when retail rotates back in. Warrior says 4588. Warrior 4588 says, I'm about 13 minutes behind. But have you checked out Hoskinson's tweet about a huge liquidity coming soon? about huge liquidity coming soon. So that was an older tweet. So that's been baked in at this point. But yeah, I mean, he said there's a bunch of liquidity coming soon. But so maybe he knows that more than other folks, but that's something that we've known for a while in some sense. Tell me what you guys think about Cardano. I told you all, I think it was in September, like mid-September, that I sold 80% of my Cardano, and I also sold 100% of my compound, right? Because I was under the impression that we could start going lower, and I only want to hold coins that I have extremely high convictions in. So I went ahead and sold my Cardano. Now, I want to know what you guys think about that, though. Have you sold anything? Have you to buy other crypto? Did anybody time it perfectly and sell the top? And are you sitting in cash? Eric Wallen, I'm looking at you if you're in here in the chat. Just a live look at Bitcoin here because I'm getting a bunch of notifications. Let's see if we're seeing a significant bounce. It doesn't look like it yet. But I mean, this is kind of what a reversal would look like. But we also had one like here, right, where you have a big wick down, and then it buys back up. But I'm pointing this out because this happened here. It kind of happened here like 4 times in a row, and now we're seeing it again. This is what I think this is called like a doji candle, or a hammer. But I'm not the candlestick guy. Don't quote me on that. But candlesticks can tell a story, and they can signal reversals. This could be that reversal. Altcoins, though, let's look at total 3. And I do have a little extra time today, so I might go longer than my 30 minutes usually. Yeah, like this is just not making me squeal with glee here. This is not making me freak out, right? Maybe it's making you freak out. Total 2 is barely even printing a candle above the previous candle. So look, it's a start, but I'm not buying it that this is the bottom. Okay. So we talked about a lot of stuff here. Let me review my notes, see what we can talk about next. Let me know if you guys have any questions. All right. Here's what we'll talk about next. So our newsletter is out. If you are interested in checking this newsletter out, I just posted the link to it in the chat here in the live chat. Bitcoin loses yearly open as FUD peaks. Ironically, DeFi is getting ready for prime time. That's a really good way to put it. DeFi is getting ready for mass market use, right? And Aave just came out with an app on the Apple App Store, right? The door is open for a flood of capital to come in from retail and from institutions. And I know that we've been saying that through all of 2025. Things have been sluggish, right? In case you didn't know, the politicians that control regulatory clarity, while they're pro-crypto, they have been distracted. Distracted is maybe not the right word, but they've been distracted from crypto progress. They got the Genius bill passed, which was fantastic, but they've been distracted from really doing what they need to do to get the ball down the road for the Market Structure Act. And that's going to be really important. We talk about that in this newsletter, so go check it out. Quentin posted this. I thought this was interesting. Short-term holder supply and profit loss ratio is lowest ever, right? So, this is a time where usually this signals a bottom, right? So it's kind of a bottoming signal. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Let's see what you're saying here. Checking the Fed spread to see if that's moved anymore. Well, technically it has. Take a look here. It is now more likely than not that we get a 25 basis point cut. Now, this isn't much data to go on, right? This is just a minute of this probably, but 49% versus 48%. Okay. And I don't think there's been any new Fed speakers today. I think this is just the market digesting it, right? So it's 50-50. Don't read too much into what I just showed you. I don't think that this is necessarily the turning point for that Fed spread to kick back bullish, but maybe it is. Thank you for doing these morning news and for taking your time to answer our questions. Heck yeah. It's my honor. Dealy Crypto Dlee said, "Been a while. What happened with Investing Bros? Thank you, T-Shroom. Take care." You see my hat? It says Tim Warren Trading. So we rebranded. It's a rebrand. I'm trying to think of a name of a company that's rebranded. MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy rebranded to Strategy. It is a business strategic decision that we made to brand everything we do around Tim. Tim is legendary. He's awesome, and so we switched the brand to kind of reflect that. Investing Bros is cool. It is something we're not ashamed of, but it's something that we kind of put up on the shelf, and we have retired that branding. It's a decision that we made a couple months ago, so it's not really fresh on my mind. But I will say that the reasons that we switched to Tim Warren Trading, those reasons have been confirmed that was the right decision to do. So we'll always be Investing Bros, but we are now Tim Warren Trading. Warrior said it was like Sunday night, the tweet I'm talking about. Sunday night. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be liquidity coming into the market. Like that is something that we know. Now, if Hoskinson knows something that's deeper than that, then that's interesting. It looks like we are getting some pop-ups in a lot of these crypto names. I'm getting notifications. Solana is now up 9%. Is that right? That seems kind of high. Yeah, Solana's up 7.8%. So Solana getting a nice candle here. Still not more than back here on October 12th. But I will say that October 12th, this was in reaction to that October 10th wick that was just crazy towns, that October 10th wick. So this reaction here was as crazy towns, but just to the upside. I would say that this is a little bit more interesting. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we got one back here, though, too. This was a 5.9, so that's not as much. 4 points. So this would be the first. If we can close this daily candle for Solana, that would look really good. Now, they do also have that new ETF that I talked to you about. I think it's called FSOL, right? This should be coming out. Yeah. So this could be it. This could be the reason why we're seeing so much upside for Solana today, is that we're seeing a lot of new inflows into Solana. And that would be from Wall Street, right? That would be from Wall Street, a little bit from retail, I suppose. But the thing about retail is they've had access to Coinbase for a long time. And if they're not in America, they've had access to Binance and other wallets for a long time. This on my screen is likely inflows from what I would imagine to be quite a bit of asset managers who understand the future of crypto and are saying Solana is going to be a good competitor to Ethereum. Oh, and by the way, it's about 1/5 of the market cap of Ethereum. So maybe it never beats Ethereum, but it's going to do some, if it does any kind of damage to Ethereum's market cap, it's going to do very well. Yeah, so Ethereum's market cap is 375 billion. Solana is only 78, right? So about a fifth, give or take. That's big. That would be a big lift if Solana was to able to even get half of that, right? So that's good. And that's going to lift some other ships too, because there's a lot of coins in the Solana ecosystem, and there's a lot of narratives. Like if Solana's doing well and some of its ecosystem coins do well, that could potentially translate over into the equivalent type of ecosystem coins for Ethereum and maybe AVAX, Cardano, right? Some of the other contenders for major block layer ones. Yeah. But for me, this is a good bounce. This is a better bounce that we've seen in the past for Solana. I think Solana is telling the story best. If this is a reversal, Solana is telling the story best. So, and that would be cool if the bottom was marked by the Solana Fidelity ETF. That would be really cool. One thing to note is this is the most reputable issuer of Solana ETFs, because BlackRock is not going to be putting out a Solana ETF, at least for now. They're staying focused on Ethereum and Bitcoin. Not really sure why. I don't know if they've given guidance on. I'm sure they've been asked that question and maybe have responded to it. But the reality is that Fidelity went for it, right? Fidelity has one, and Fidelity is huge. Fidelity is a very, very big name on Wall Street. They manage a lot of people's 401ks, right? So they're very well respected. That would be interesting if this marked the bottom. Aave's up 4.2 right now. Uniswap's not up 2%, just under 2%. So it's a little bit of an exciting time. Kind of feeling a little bit more optimism come into the market today. I'd just say, don't marry it. Don't marry the optimism. Don't feel like this is the time to lose your mind. Continue to proper risk manage, right? Don't go buy Bitcoin when you don't have money for groceries. Be smart. Be smart. We got a lot more comments here. And it's Tuesday, so I got a little bit more time. Thank you for doing these morning sessions. Yes. Redline said, Sav, another stream. And I believe Fed members out recession word. Wallard, I think his name is. Check it out. Man, I don't know why you have to write like this, bro. Like, I can barely read what you're saying here, but it sounds like you're saying, Fed Waller said recession, which is leading you to believe maybe they're gonna, I don't know. Let me see if I can find anything on this. I'm tempted to just skip this comment, because I don't even really know what it says. I don't know why. Let's see. Okay, so we do have some comments from Fed Bar. Fed Bar said, moves to weaken bank supervision present real dangers. Yeah, that's not good, but that's not policy. Bank supervision relies on credit. Okay, so the Fed Bar just started his speech. So if you're talking about that, what is this fear and greed for? I think this is just for crypto. Or no, this is probably for, is this for equities? Okay, we're getting more confused than clarification here. So, here's the Fidelity has launched their Solana ETF today, seeding with 23,000 Solana, 3 million. They are not using their own custody solutions for the ETF, and instead are using combination of BitGo, Coinbase, and Anchorage Digital. Cool. Okay, so we're going to continue to monitor what Fed Bar is saying, but let's see if there's anything new. Tether announces strategic investment in Lend. There's also a really big headline. I mean, it's kind of bullish vibes, but let me go over to Twitter. We'll wrap up after this. We got a lot of comments though. Smash the like. You got, actually, now that we're doing this live on an actual YouTube channel, not just unlisted, it does matter for you guys to smash the like. So please do that. Here's the headline. This one's interesting. Lloyd's Bank Group buys Curve. It's only 120 million pounds. So it's not dollars. So I think that's like a little bit less than 120 million. That's a pretty small number for buying Curve. Now, I don't know if they just bought their digital wallet division, but this is not a headline you hear, going into a winter, right? Lloyd Bank, this to me says Lloyd Banks Group, which is a super old British bank, I think. They have ordered reports from their research team. They've gotten those reports back, and a bunch of old stodgy British people in a board at an old bank said, I think based on this research, we should buy Curve. Like, that is not something that happens when everybody's thinking crypto is going to zero. At least that's how I interpret that. This is something that happens when the old stodgy board members get that report back and they say, ooh, you know what? We're behind the 8 ball big time. We don't have the capacity to go out and find talent that knows how to develop blockchain and then come up with a strategy our own. Let's just go out and buy a distressed crypto organization that already is operational and doesn't completely suck, and let's just rock with that. And this is actually something that the billionaires over at the All In podcast have been predicting is going to happen, is that TradFi is just going to start buying up crypto companies, crypto projects that have traction, have users. All right. All right, let's do a little bit more chat here, then we'll call it 40 minutes, 68 watching live. Smash the like button. Redline said that would explain the spread getting better, but would be all bad for crypto if we are recession bound. No, where is this recession? Recession is not a real word. Like, I've said this months ago. If you're thinking about a recession, you're thinking about 2 quarters of negative GDP. GDP in the United States, despite the tariffs, is robust. Okay. So that's the definition of a recession, and that's not going to happen, probably. The second thing is we had that happen, and they didn't call it a recession. A recession is no longer a word that means anything, in my opinion, right? So just be careful if you're investing and trading based off of a recession. Just I would say make sure you understand more about the situation than just saying recession bad, I do X, I sell, right? Recession is not a word that I pay attention to or value. Anybody saying things about a recession, what are they talking about? Are they talking about the old definition? Are they talking about the new definition? Are they talking about something that's going to lead to a depression? Are they talking about a recession in a specific industry? Can there be a recession in AI? AI is a big part of the economy now. There's not a lot of labor going into it, right? So does the unemployment matter? How do you define a recession when AI and software is leading the S&P 500? I think recession is a flimsy and useless term. Aster up 17%. Aster was one of the altcoins that I bought 2 days ago. I'll let you guys know that in the Discord. Okay, Warrior said, if you are looking at this as the start of a bear market, you should look at the business cycle and how we haven't even started the bull market yet, because when the last admin financed debt, it was for 5 years versus 4 years. So the bullish cycle has been pushed to the right a whole year. The price action around Bitcoin is based on ETFs and 4-year cycle people. Also, a thought around 4-year cycle, if the year closes red, it also invalidates the 4-year cycle. Okay. The 4-year cycle, like the recession, is no longer relevant. We have to, as investors moving into the exponential age of growth, not moving into it, we're in it. We're in probably the second or third or fourth inning, not of the crypto development cycle, just of exponential growth. We are in the singularity, folks. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. Singularity University, singularity theory. I think we're in it, and it's kind of like the old metaphor of a frog being dropped into boiling water. You don't know that you're in the singularity, but we're talking about humanoid robots with artificial intelligence in their brain. Right now, that is something that if you went and told folks listening to Nickelback in 2015, hey, there's going to be humanoid robots with artificial intelligence running it. Nobody's going to be running it. It's going to be running on its own. And it's going to be doing people's laundry. It's going to be shipped by Tesla, the company that hasn't even made EVs yet. Those people in 2015 would be like, whatever, bro. And they would keep jamming out to Nickelback. All right. So you have to be careful thinking about recessions. You have to be careful thinking about the 4-year cycle. The 4-year cycle is over, in my opinion. Anybody still talking about the 4-year cycle, the only people who I would still respect their opinion that are talking about the 4-year cycle are Bitcoin billionaire whales, right? Who could potentially replicate the 4-year cycle if they wanted to, a synthetic 4-year cycle. And the CEO of CleanSpark, Marathon, and the big publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, right? Those are the only people who I would listen to their opinions on the 4-year cycle, because they're the ones that could actually induce it. But everybody else is wrong. If they're still saying that the 4-year cycle is intact. I think it's a much more compelling argument that there never was a 4-year cycle. That what we saw is like what Warrior's saying here. There was a cycle that happened to be the 4-year cycle that Satoshi set up. The 4-year mining, the 4-year Bitcoin halving system that exists, right? It correlated very neatly with the business cycle that Warrior's pointing out here. And so while I'm not going to come out and say this is absolutely true, what I am going to say is it's looking more like the 4-year cycle, what we thought of as the 4-year cycle, was never actually real. It was an illusion. What was real was that there were miners who accumulated a lot of Bitcoin over a period of time. And then when the halving came up, they sold a lot of Bitcoin in order to fund new purchases of better, more efficient miners and to just fund their operations in general. That induced a huge sell-off because the miners all sold at the same time, right? But that is not something that is going to happen again because those miners are fighting over 5% of the Bitcoin supply that's left unmined, right? So 5% of 21 million is not enough to move the needle. Now, what's important is that those Bitcoin whales, though, the Bitcoin whales that we're seeing selling, they are similar and they have the power. It doesn't matter if I believe in the 4-year cycle or if I don't, they still have the power to drop Bitcoin's price down to numbers that I shall not utter on this live stream. They could do it because they have so much, right? But the fact that they're selling now, those whales, and that Bitcoin isn't down at really low levels, indicates to me that yes, there's definitely more sellers than buyers right now. There is more Bitcoin that is held by people who are selling that Bitcoin, those whales, than there are new people like me coming into the space and buying Bitcoin, continuing to DCA. So there's more sellers than buyers. Doesn't take a lot of brain cells to come to that conclusion. But the reality is that it is not the 4-year cycle that is making the price come down. It is the whales who don't do the Bitcoin OG whales that don't do a whole lot of engaging on Twitter because they're billionaires, right? In Bitcoin terms, they do a whole lot of thinking about Satoshi, thinking about the white paper, thinking about Bitcoin ethos from previous cycles, right? And so when they go to sell, they're selling based on this conception that they have of a 4-year cycle. So in that way, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if these whales wanted to create another 4-year cycle where we go into a Bitcoin winter, they're the ones that are going to be able to do it. Because I'll tell you right now, even with all the selling that they're doing, there's a whole lot more that they have that they could continue to sell. But the reality is that the amount that they're selling now is sustainable. If they just keep selling the amount that they're selling, that's sustainable. We also covered on the live show yesterday, I don't have the graphic up, but there's a information coming from Glassnode showing that those whales selling is actually slowing down. Okay. So what should all of this mean for you at home? You're new to crypto. Maybe you've gotten in the last 3 to 5 to 6 months. Man, you have gotten in at a tough time. And if you had just gotten in now, if you had just talked to your brother-in-law or read an article in Time Mag or whatever it was that got you interested in Bitcoin, if you had just had that experience in November, December, January, you would be someone who is feeling very little pain until we get into a sell-off period later on in the future. But because you came into it in October and September, you're feeling pain. That's the only difference between someone who would not be feeling pain and someone who is feeling pain is the time that you got in, right? Because that time came with different prices. But I'm here to tell you, no matter when you came into Bitcoin, you're still buying the same future-proof security for your wealth. That is what Bitcoin is, right? That's why I continue to buy it. That's why I continue to hold it. And that's why I continue to study the market intensely. Somebody said that was funny. Carlton Way said that was funny. Paintopia VR. Strange name. Paintopia VR. I hope you don't create VR games that are pain-inducing. Said the frogs in boiling water at the people thinking the bull market isn't over. The frogs in boiling water, maybe some mean, are the people thinking the bull market isn't over. That's a lot of. It's hard for me to really clamp down on what that means, but I think you're bearish. Institutions rugged us, and they want you all to keep holding so they can continue to sell into every rally. Maybe. I mean, it's the ETF holders that are selling. It's the ETFs and it's the whales that are selling, right? ETF though, yes, in some way it's institutions, but it's kind of not, right? The institutions, the digital asset treasury companies, they're not selling. They have slowed their buying because they were hyper aggressive in the first half of 2025. They've slowed their buying into the second half, although they have still bought. Michael Saylor bought $800 million worth of Bitcoin 2 days ago. So, look, this is what makes a market, though, because Paintopia VR could be right. Paintopia, I think, is saying that no. The frogs in the boiling water are people who are continuing to hold digital assets, Ethereum and Bitcoin today. Maybe you're right? That's what makes a market. You could be right. I could be right. If you zoom out on Bitcoin, people who have held Bitcoin are the ones who are right? People who have sold Bitcoin at pretty much every time, except for the last 6 months, have been right. Okay. But, I'm not saying you're dumb. You just have a different perspective than I do on this. ETFs isn't always bullish. What if it allows lots of institutions to short the asset instead? Buddy, the reality is that these assets are either valuable and they're the foundation of the future of money and payments, or they're not, right? So just because the tools are now, you make a good point that just because the tools are now available for more leverage points for institutions to get on these assets, that is a short-term trader's problem, right? That's not a investor's problem. An investor's problem is, am I buying stuff that's going to be more valuable 5-10 years from now? Okay. Because that's what the underlying asset was. If you go back and you look at Amazon's chart, there were periods where Amazon shed 30%, right, in a short period of time. Were the people who were holding Amazon wrong? No. Now, they look like fools when the price was going down, but they understood what Amazon was going to be, much more than a book sales company, right? So it's all about the underlying value. Either these blockchains are going to produce value or they're not. But thank you for tuning in. You're thinking about this stuff, and that's better than what 90% of people are doing. They're just watching somebody on YouTube and buying the coin, hopefully buying the real coin that a YouTuber is talking about, although a lot of people just buy a fake coin that they don't even understand how crypto works. So the fact that you're thinking about this stuff is commendable. Good. Warrior said, agree, Taylor. 4-year cycle was only a thing because it was tied to the business cycle. It's worth a deep dive if you haven't looked back on how it all played out. Yeah. Cool. Kenny said, hodl on. The 4-year has been a fascinating topic. And what makes it so interesting is no one can be 100% certain of where we are going. That's right. That's right. One thing is certain is Bitcoin will be worth more in 2030. I think that's the case, right? I think that's the reason why I wake up and do these live streams, is because these assets are going to be worth more in the future. Now, not all of them, right? Compound, I don't think is going to be, I think is one that I don't have confidence, like I have confidence in Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, that they will be more valuable in the future. Chainlink as well, I think will be valuable in the future. Okay, let me land it with this. Jordy Vischer, in case you haven't heard of this, Jordy Vischer is an analyst, 30 years on Wall Street. He had a thesis a couple weeks ago. This thesis went viral. The thesis is take the 4-year cycle concept and theory and throw it into the garbage. What is happening now, what we're seeing now, is functionally a Bitcoin and to some extent crypto IPO process. Bitcoin in 2025 has IPO'd. And now we're seeing the early investors get out, right? But what you have to understand is that an initial public offering where the early investors get out, that's not necessarily bearish. Look at any stock on Wall Street that is above $1 trillion. You go back and look at their IPO, the underwriters, whoever it was, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, whoever it was, they sold a portion of their underlying of their private equity at that IPO phase. You'd be stupid not to. That's the whole point. In underwriting and getting in early on a pre-public company. If I was a Bitcoin OG whale, I don't know. I don't know if I would sell my Bitcoin, but I might sell a little bit of it. And I think that's what we're seeing here is these guys, they're looking at Bitcoin at 100, 126, and they're like, wow, this may never get back to these highs again. Now they don't know because nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. But what they are looking at is the amount that Bitcoin is worth in dollars, and they're saying, if I'm holding Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin because I bought early, and I don't sell it, and I just hold on to this Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes to a very scary number, I'm going to feel very stupid because I was a billionaire at one point. And so they just make that calculation and they go ahead and they sell a bit of Bitcoin. Now, some of the other OGs are thinking, man, artificial intelligence. I want to go buy Microsoft. I want to go buy OpenAI on the private equity side. I want to go buy SpaceX. So they're selling to go fund that. If I was a Bitcoin whale OG, I would probably sell a little bit of the Bitcoin, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these whales selling 5 to 20% of their holdings of their total address, but that's billions of dollars, right? They're selling a little bit, some of them a little bit more than a little bit, and the logic, the reason, and some of the people, I listen to a lot of crypto podcasts. Some people are actually going out and talking to some of these OG whales. The reason is because they've reached a level where they're Jeff Bezos. They've reached a level where they're Bill Gates. They are billionaires, right? Why sit around? They're not. Is it really going to change your life if you're a billionaire and Bitcoin goes to $1 million per coin? You're just going to be even richer, right? So the thinking is sell some of it to lock in the gains and probably go invest in OpenAI and SpaceX or whatever. Maybe go buy, a bunch of acres in Brazil. Who knows what they're going to buy, whatever their investment thesis is. But I think that's the logic, and I don't blame them, right? If I bought Bitcoin at $10, at $1,000, I probably would have sold a little bit by now, and I would have sold it into strength, right? I see people talking about specific altcoins, AVAX. I think somebody mentioned another one earlier. There's ones that are getting attention from American institutions, and there's ones that are not getting attention. AVAX most certainly is getting attention. It has stayed on my balance sheet. Cardano, I think, is amazing. I think it's probably one of the best blockchains, but it is not getting that institutional attention and partnerships at the rate of others, right? And it also just hasn't shown a whole lot of strength. The best thing that's happened to Cardano over the last couple of years is that it was among the top 3 cryptos in market cap for a long time, right? So that's really good. But then also it was in the crypto strategic reserve. Well, where's the crypto strategic reserve? Is that relevant? It might be relevant again in the midterms here pretty soon, as Trump does what he can to reinvigorate the crypto voting bloc of the United States. But yeah, so ultimately, of all of the cryptos in the top 20, top 50, I think a lot of them, you have to just look at, are they something that a institutional investor is going to be interested in investing in? Is it related to stable coins? Can you consider it stablecoin infrastructure or not? And then is it something that, like Bitcoin, right, that is just a new store of value for the world, right? Or is it tokenization? Because that is what people who are advising and managing people's money, that's what they're being told right now at meetings that they go to, at networking events. They're talking about three things: Bitcoin, stablecoins, and tokenization. Are they talking about AI, crypto? Not really. Tao's doing really well. I haven't sold it. I'm going to hold on to that. But if it's not Bitcoin, stablecoin infrastructure, or tokenization infrastructure, you better have a really good understanding of what it is. In Cardano, unfortunately, because the stablecoin piece never really quite fit with Cardano perfectly, I just don't know what's going to happen with it. So, whereas AVAX, I think it has as good a chance as any to do really well. All right, folks. This has been good. That was the morning news. Went way longer than usually we do. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have a little bit more time. So we'll see. But there we go. Adios. Have a good one. Nathan said, Tau has the same tokenomics as Bitcoin. Look, there's going to be a lot of cryptos that don't have those institutional ties that do well. It's just, as a crypto investor, having done this for a while, for my portfolio, they've got to have those institutional conversations being had. If not, then you got to be something like Tau. Like, there's a couple of other shining stars that are maybe able to do it alone. But you got to remember what this cycle is. Remember, it's kind of the IPO cycle, right? So you have previous cycles, not necessarily 4-year mining cycles, whatever, but you do have previous bull and bust cycles where these assets were being valued on promise alone, right? You get these names that would come out and say they're going to be the new payment structure for the world, right? And then a bunch of other projects would come out and say the exact same thing. That's pretty cool, right? Investors would go out and participate in those narratives just based on the promise, right? Elon Musk promised electric vehicles. People bought the stock, but eventually they demanded that he deliver those electric vehicles, and then they demanded that he deliver more, and then he demanded that they lower the price on those electric vehicles, and then they demanded humanoid robots, right? And then they demanded energy production. All of these things were promised at one point, but then he delivered. Crypto projects that are not delivering revenue to coin holders, that doesn't mean cash flows, that means value, right? The value of the tokenomics is solid and it is accretive to the efforts of the blockchain. Price go up, right? If not, then the best thing you can hope for is what we got from Lloyd Banks this morning for Curve, which is you come in and instead of getting bought by the market, you get bought by a big institution itself. They just come in and just swallow the whole thing. It's not a bunch of crowdsourced people like me saying, ooh, Curve, that's a cool thing. I'm going to invest in that and stake on it, blah, 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 blah. No, Lloyd Bank just comes in and says, we'll take the whole thing. 120 million. Adios. Have a good day. We do this all the time. We just bought 500 million in railroad infrastructure in Bosnia, right? Or whatever. Have a good day. Right. That's another way that this could go. And I do think that something like Cardano may not do something like that because of the ideology, the principles of it. But I think that that's potentially the direction that a crypto project would need to go if it's not going to get institutional interest. Either that, or it just remains a retail chain, and that's fine. But retail doesn't have the same money and the same organizational principles. And as we're seeing over the last couple of weeks, they don't have the same fortitude. They don't have the same ability to withstand periods of downswing in price. And so, again, I want to be on Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, these coins that have very sturdy handshakes with TradFi. Not because I love TradFi, not because I love the debt structure, not because of these things. It's because that is what it takes in this cycle. All right. What do I think about Zbeck, payroll payment system altcoin use case? I've never heard of it. Let's take a look. I've said I'm going to hop off here 4 or 5 times. Zbeck. Z. And you better realize that I'm only doing this because I'm going to make an example of this project. But it looks like it might have. I don't know, man. I'm not finding it. Zbeck. Is it related to Base? I don't even see it on CoinGecko. So that's not a good sign. If it's this Zebichain, I would be very careful. This is extremely low market cap. Anybody watching this is something I would never invest in. But I'm only looking at this because someone in the chat was talking about it. ZBCN. Okay, so someone to give me the wrong ticker. ZBCN. Okay, this has a $260 million market cap. It's on Solana. I mean, it doesn't look horrible. The problem with this is, like, when was the last time that it had any kind of talk about an ETF? Is there an ETF discussion being had here? So this would be an example of something that I'm sure people are really excited about. This is just not the technology cycle. Like that. Now, Crux is going to tell you something different because Crux looks at this stuff a lot differently. That's okay. And there's probably a lot of great technology behind Zbeck network. There might even be some big institutions that hold it, right? If A16Z or Arthur Hayes or somebody like that is a holder of this, then I would consider that to be semi-institutional, right? Institutional if A16Z holds it for sure. I just don't know. So I don't know. Maybe Coinbase has it on their balance sheet. Maybe World LibertyFi has it on their balance sheet, right? In terms of payroll payment system, maybe. Why can't Ethereum do that though? Why can't Solana do that? Is the Solana and Ethereum going to have to get on their knees and beg Zbeck network to help them do payroll processing? I don't know. Hey, looks like there's a decent amount of support for ZBCN. So hey, go do your own research. I don't think that it's worth a ton of time to go this far down the risk curve, down to number 236, but I'm not going to enjoy the same type of X's as people who are willing to go look at those types of names, right? That's the reality. That's the reality of it. I'm not afraid to say it. I don't want to spend time going that far down the risk curve when there's projects like Uniswap and Aave in the top 50 that I can invest in with a lot more high confidence because they are DeFi, Ethereum ecosystem coins. They are stablecoin infrastructure. Okay, so ZBCN, cool. Take a look at. I mean, look, if that's your thing, if small caps are your thing, first of all, take a look at Gem Hunters. We have Crux as a Gem Hunter. This is what he does. I'm not saying it's dumb to look at small caps. I'm saying for my portfolio, I've got to know that they have strong handshakes with institutions because of these types of drawdowns that we're seeing. Hey, if you're holding this coin, Zbeck network or whatever it is, through this type of a drawdown, you have more fortitude than I do. Or, there's something not clicking for you. I don't know which one it is, genuinely, but that is commendable, right? I sold coins that I was not confident in because of what I kind of saw coming. Now, I should have sold a lot more. I should have taken a lot more profit so that I could be buying levels here for Solana and Bitcoin. Didn't do that. That sucks. We live to fight another day because we have good risk management. I've gone over 1 hour and 10 minutes. We've had fun. And then another comment catches my eye. I'm not going to let it happen this time, guys. You guys are really good, though. Appreciate. Join us tomorrow. Come back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Actually, next week we're probably going to be moving to 9:30 a.m. But for now, it's 10 a.m. Adios. I'll see you then. Bye.